Free Julian Assange. Would you like a leaflet?
There we are. There's the 3 online places. One's run by his wife to get him out of Belmarsh prison. He's still in there, unfortunately.
I'll check it out later.
Thank you. Wow, that's your tick. I'm not taking it.
I'm putting that for me.
Free Julian. Let him go.
Sign the petition.
I will.
Thank you very much. You go online and do it. There's the 3. That's what his missus.
Pretty sure I already have, but I will.
Would you like
Well, it'll tell you it'll tell you if you have already. So.
Would you like to have your name on a ribbon?
Of course. Lily.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Sydney's Town Hall gathering for Julian Assange.
We're here for Julian Assange. But first, I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the original inhabitants, owners and custodians of this fine land. Pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Thank you very much. We're here for Julian Assange. He's been held in one form or another, detained illegally since the 7th of December 2010. The mainstream media are no longer to be called the media. They are to be called the propaganda arm of our government. And the worst of them is our ABC. Our ABC. The misinformation that the ABC spread is well documented. Most recently, at the beginning of the year, one of their senior editors said that Julian would be out within a couple of months. Well, that was, 4 or 5 months ago he said that. It was a lie. It was based on nothing. It was designed to take the heat off Anthony Albanese, who said, as one of his election promises, that Julian Assange's matter must be brought to an end. But a journalist has done an investigation with Freedom of Information, FOI, and discovered that the Albanese government have done nothing. Zero. There's no documentation. They've done nothing. Except lie. They've lied. So they have done something. I beg. Thank you. Thank you. We've woken up. 88% of Australians support this man. We've woken up. And that's why Albo's lying to us. He's staving off the inevitable. But if he doesn't deliver on his promise, his tenure as the Prime Minister of this country is going to be terminated at the next federal election. At the recent New South Wales state election, it was comforting to see that the Australian Labor Party failed to get a majority in either house of the New South Wales government. Most importantly, in the upper house, which is the House of Review, called the Legislative Assembly, is very much in the hands of the independents, commonly referred to those who vote for them as the freedom-loving independents. And not only are they fighting tooth and nail for Julian's freedom, but they're all fighting for your freedom, which is also Julian's goal. He's doing what he's doing, not for himself, but for you. In my opinion, he is a true hero. He has forfeited 13 years of his liberty for us. It is the largest petition before the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The same petition is before our Australian Federal Parliament, where approximately 50 of the 250 federal politicians have joined the Friends of the Bring Julian Assange Home group. The pressure is mounting, and those that support the American persecution of Julian Assange are now in the minority in Australia, the microscopic minority. And less we hear from them, because they know the majority of us have woken up to what's going on to not only Julian Assange, but our right for free speech, our right to know the truth about what our government is doing with our money, in our name, in war zones all over the world, tiptoeing around behind the Americans, carrying out orders in illegal war zones.
I think there are big changes afoot in the geopolitical landscape.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very big changes.
Free Julian!
Yes.
It's amazing that even school children now understand the wrongfulness of the government's policy in being tacit with our foreign friends, allies, and the Australian people about freeing Assange. We have a situation where the criminals can choose to prosecute people, whistleblowers, that expose their crimes and keep them embroiled in bankrupting type legal proceedings for as long as they like, because the state goes on in perpetuity. They can persecute and prosecute a person based on false assertions ad infinitum. It's a very powerful weapon in terms of silencing dissent. What we've seen with the Assange matter is they want Julian Assange permanently silenced, and they want to frighten every other journalist in the world from reporting on the crimes that public officials commit. I don't know if you know, at the moment there is a bill being tabled in America which is nominally called the Restrict Act. The provisions of this Restrict Act are so horrendous that you can hardly believe they would even dream of trying to do it. They are effectively introducing laws allegedly to stop misinformation on the internet, and really what they mean by that is to justify censorship of the internet on an industrial level, because they don't want criticism. Of course they don't want cynicism. They're like a mafia. They have to be criticized. If we don't have criticism, we have nothing. If we don't have free speech, we have nothing. If we don't have human rights, we have nothing. That is why we're here. The Assange issue is all about human rights for everybody. Free speech, accountability of public officials. We can no longer, in this day and age, go on with these endless wars that kill millions of people. Okay, it's worse than that. Under the terms of this Restrict Act, the penalties for misinformation or speech the government considers harmful basically anything the government doesn't like is $1 million fine and up to 20 years imprisonment. Now, does anybody think this is reasonable? That can be applied to anybody that criticises the government on any level. This is a fact. This is not misinformation. Research the Restrict Act.
Welcome to the 179th week of Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gatherings. Public trust in governments and mainstream media is probably lower now than it has ever been. A low level of trust in governments and mainstream media probably spans the entire globe. Why should anyone trust governments and mainstream media when Julian Assange, who published 100% truth, is cruelly persecuted without meaningful assistance from anyone holding a position capable of bringing about the end of that persecution? We needed the mainstream media to back Julian when he first began publishing public interest information. But instead, the mainstream media became involved in pushing multiple smears against him. The smearing of Julian by mainstream media assists the non-transparency of corrupt and undemocratic governments and corporations who profit from the oppression of people. We need to realise that mainstream media are large corporations that have profited from war and other catastrophes. Unfortunately, it is not in the interests of mainstream media to publish information which empowers people. The mainstream media have pushed many scams over the past 100 years, including promoting unnecessary wars, draconian laws, and unsafe health measures. In contrast, Julian Assange set up WikiLeaks to publish true information that empowers people and assists them to hold governments and corporations to account. The so-called journalists who work for the so-called mainstream media are not free to publish anything. Mainstream journalists must conform with the requirements of the corporations that employ them. They are far from being the free press they proclaim themselves to be. While the mainstream media have contributed greatly to the persecution of Julian Assange, there are many journalists who think that he should be free. Overnight, we have learnt that the Journalists' Union in Europe have collectively come out in support of Julian Assange, declaring him a full and honorary member of the journalist unions of many different nations right across Europe, including the UK, Italy, France, Germany, and Spain. They have called on the US to drop its charges against Julian. While the solidarity amongst journalists shows us there is great support and respect for Julian amongst fellow journalists, we shouldn't believe that we will now see a flood of pro-Julian Assange articles in the mainstream media. It is very likely that future mainstream media articles concerned with Julian will continue to smear his character and omit important facts that are likely to be seen favourably by the public, with the purpose of undermining a truly free press. We can take heart that journalists of Europe are standing in solidarity with Julian and freedom of the press. We also need to be mindful of the fact that the mainstream media are in lockstep with non-transparent power. This means that we still need to encourage as many people as we can to realise the importance of standing up for Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Thank you.
Free Julian Assange.